Hey, what's up everyone? TJ here. Today we're checking out a brand new snowboard from Never Summer. It's called the Benchmark. Let's get into the review. All right, y'all, real quick for your reference before I jump into the specs. I'm 5'10", I weigh around 155 pounds, and I tested this snowboard in size 156. And if you're curious about the other gear that I'm running, everything is linked down below this video if you want to check it out. So the Benchmark is an all-mountain free ride focused board on the Never Summer lineup that's also going to be very powder capable. It does have a directional design to it, although you'll see Never Summer market this as a directional twin. It does have some proper directional features in my opinion. So you're going to find a directional outline with a slightly longer nose up front outside the contact points, a little bit of a shorter tail outside the rear here. You're also going to get 8 millimeters of setback, so the inserts are shifted a little bit closer to the tail, as well as 10 millimeters of taper. So the tail is just slightly narrower than the nose as well. And you'll notice here on the insert packs, Never Summer did add these blower stance inserts right here. So if you feel like it's not quite cutting it on a deep day, you can set that stance back that much further, shorten the tail up, make the nose a little bit bigger, and just make it that much easier for you out there. This board does run Never Summer's original rocker camber bend, but it's slightly directional as well. Overall, going to be a rocker dominant profile. You're going to have a pretty significant rocker section between the feet, camber zones underfoot, leading into more rocker, blending into the tips here. However, the camber zone under your back foot is going to be a little bit heavier, and you're going to find a little bit of a longer rocker zone in the nose here to just help with that float and make it a little bit easier to navigate. And there is a little bit more tech in this snowboard I want to highlight for you guys. There's quite a bit of carbon built into the layup. You're going to get Never Summer's Carbon Max laminates. So there's a fat carbon X going through the body of the snowboard out to right about where your feet are, helping transfer energy out to those camber zones, making the board a little bit more responsive, as well as carbon V's in the tips, both in the nose and tail, to just help maximize the snap and the energy you're going to be able to load up in this thing. It also has Never Summer's dampening technologies built into it to help smooth out the ride as you're out there cruising around, and their power grip side cut. So that's like a straight section here, kind of in the middle of the side cut, and then it transfers into a progressive side cut out to the contact point. So it just helps isolate pressure a little bit more right around here where your feet are and help give the board a little bit more bite in more firm conditions. And the last thing I want to mention for you guys here on the Benchmark is that it does run an ultra high molecular weight sintered base. So that's a higher end base material. It's more dense, it's tougher, more durable, and faster versus an extruded base. Of course, you want to wax it regularly so it stays nice and fast through the season. I also want to highlight that Never Summer sources their bases from Crown Plastics, a US based company, and they're pretty bomb proof. Never Summers do have tough bases, so that is a nice value add on all their boards. But yeah, that's it for a quick tech breakdown. Let's get into how this board felt around the mountain. Let's start by talking about the overall flex and feel you're going to get here with the Benchmark. So I'll tell you, this board does have a pretty capable all-mountain feel to it. It's pretty sturdy. I'd say the flex is on the stiffer side of medium, both lengthwise and torsionally. Has a nice responsive feel, edge to edge as well. And you do kind of have to rock to the end of that rocker dominant profile before you feel the tension start to load up in the snowboard. So it does give you more leverage for leaning into presses, but then you start to feel the stiffness of the board show up and you feel that stability you can get out of this thing. So you are gonna have to work a little bit to get taller presses, but it's still fun to butter around on. I think the reverse camber profile does give it a little bit of a easier, looser feel to play around with those types of maneuvers. But this isn't the board that's gonna give you like sky high, super styled out presses, but you can definitely have fun buttering around with it. And it has some good pop as well. I think once you figure out that sweet spot of where that tension starts loading up and you can start kind of figuring out how to get your ollies feeling right, it does spring you pretty good. I think the pop is there. And it's got some good energy for playing around with a more freestyle forward approach as well. I did take this board through the park as well, and I think the Benchmark gives more of an all mountain feel versus just like a straight park feel. Can still definitely be a lot of fun for some park laps, but I think it's a little bit more jump leaning with the stability and precision in this snowboard. Makes a nice platform to pop off of on the lip of jumps, and I do like, especially with this Never Summer rocker camber, I think it makes it a little bit easier to initiate rotation, so that's fun to play around with. But the board rides switch comfortably. That's not really going to be an issue for you in the park. And it jibs okay. It jibs like a stiffer park board. I do think that this heavier rocker between the feet makes it a little bit more challenging locking into features, especially 50-50. My first lap through the park, I think there's like a whole lap where I just came off every feature early, but something you can get used to. It slides sideways well, just has a little bit more precision than maybe you might want for jibbing, and just does have that stiffer parkboard feel overall, but not too bad. I want to talk about the carving and resort experience you're going to get with this snowboard as well. At size 156, you're going to get a 25.9 centimeter waist width on the Benchmark. So a little bit wider, kind of approaching mid-wide territory. It's definitely nice to have that extra width that just kind of makes deeper carves a little bit more accessible, or if you have a larger boot size, it can help mitigate any drag you might be experiencing a little bit more. And it runs a 7.8 meter side cut. And like I said, it has that progressive side cut, but it falls in that versatile range that just kind of feels comfortable at really whatever speed you're at. It's good going slow, feels good going fast. But I think the more notable thing when it comes to carving on this snowboard is the profile. As soon as you get this thing on edge, it just naturally wants to arc into a turn. Super easy to get this thing to carve. Very easy to initiate turns despite it being a little bit stiffer. And it's a bit of a ripper. It holds an edge better than you might think. And I don't think it's gonna be lacking stability-wise either. I think this is a board that you could take into those steeper, spicier zones, and you're not gonna be wishing you brought a different snowboard. I think this has the stability to hold it down in those scenarios. And even if you're just like bombing it down a groomer, trying to open this thing up, I was surprised at how little chatter there was in this thing as well. You know, with rocker dominant boards, the tips tend to flutter a little bit more, but the Benchmark held strong. So overall, I think very competent on the groomers, capable resort explorer, definitely does have that solid all mountain feel to it. I do want to share how this board feels in deeper snow conditions as well. I was fortunate enough to have this thing on me out in Japan this season and took it out on just a beautiful bluebird day with deep snow in one of my favorite zones. And there's a few things I want to highlight. First off is just with the bend in the tips of the snowboard, you'll notice that the nose and the tail have more of a gradual uplift. So I think that interfaces with soft snow a little bit better and just kind of allows the board to start floating a little bit easier rather than like pushing into soft snow if you're transitioning from like a groomer into powder. Also, with this overall reverse camber bend, it just has this feel where like the powder just cradles the snow from underneath. And the default state is just buoyancy. This thing just like wants to bounce up out of the POW. Anytime you're putting pressure down into the soft snow, just wants to poke right up out of it. Feels so, so good. This board definitely comes through with a lot of float and a great feel in those conditions. And I also want to talk about the tail. So a lot of times boards with solid tails like this tend to be a little bit sluggish in powder conditions, but the way the snow exits and just gets spit out of the tail of the snowboard, it actually maintains a pretty maneuverable feel. And I think that's mainly contributed towards the taper as well as the rocker you find in the tail of the board. It just maintains a nice, nimble, easy to maneuver feel, even when you're not going that fast in deeper snow conditions, which I found was pretty awesome. And of course, having this solid tail with the more shallow kind of planing bend is going to give you a bit of more switch versatility in powder as well, which can come in handy. If I was going to buy this board as like a powder first board, I was going to use this as my main powder board, I'd probably size up one size just to maximize that float a little bit more and get a little more surface area. But even at size 156, this thing floated really, really well. I was riding it at the reference stance. I didn't even use these setback inserts, and I had a great experience. So I think the 5.6 is going to be more versatile around the rest of the resort for all the other types of riding you might be doing. But if you do want to truly maximize float, maybe consider going up just one size. All right, overall, I think the Benchmark is a really solid all-mountain choice. It has a little bit of a more high performance, like slightly more aggressive feel to it. It's gonna deliver a lot of precision, holds a really good edge, floats well, but it's still easy to control and maneuver. And I think this is gonna be a good choice for those of you that like exploring the resort that you're at. You're covering a lot of ground, you're seeing a lot of varying terrain and varying snow types, and you want a board that's gonna be solid through all that. So if that sounds like you, consider the Never Summer Benchmark. I'm gonna have this thing linked down below the video so you can find it if you wanna check it out. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments or if you feel like I left anything out. As always, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching. Drop a like if you did get some value, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new here so you don't miss any future reviews.